I'm going to spill my story, and it's not a pretty one. I've been married to Claire for 6 years, and let me tell you, it's been a roller coaster. She's got this artistic side that's vibrant and wild, and I used to think our differences were what made us work. I'm a laid-back guy, you know. I work in tech, mostly behind a screen, dealing with numbers and codes. Claire. She's a free spirit, a painter, and obsessed with museums, especially the ones that showcase modern art. At first, it was exciting. I loved how her passion brought color into my life. We spend weekends exploring galleries and discussing the meaning behind abstract pieces. But somewhere along the line, things started to change. I noticed little things at first, like how late she was coming home after her art classes. She'd brush it off as dedication to her craft. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But the nagging feeling wouldn't go away. There were nights when she'd come home smelling like a different cologne, a sharp, masculine scent that wasn't mine. I'd ask her about it and she'd laugh it off, claiming she bumped into some artistic types who were working on a collaborative project. Her excuses seemed rehearsed, and I found myself questioning every word. I remember the first time I tried to confront the issue. I casually brought it up over dinner, suggesting we spend more time together, and her response was colder than I expected. "I'm busy, Jake, can't you see that?" That stuck with me. Busy. Doing what? I kept my suspicions close to my chest, but deep down I knew something was off. This wasn't the Claire I fell in love with. One fateful night, I decided to surprise her at the gallery opening she had been raving about. I was excited, bringing her flowers, wanting to show off how supportive I could be. When I arrived, the atmosphere was electric, filled with art enthusiasts sipping wine and mingling. I scanned the crowd, searching for her familiar face, but instead I spotted her with this guy, a museum curator named Michael. They were laughing closely, and I could see the way she leaned into him, her body language screaming intimacy. I felt something snap inside me. I stood there, frozen, watching them. My heart raced as I processed what I was seeing. The shock of it hit me like a freight train. This was no simple friendship. There was a spark between them that was unmistakable. Anger flared up, and I felt betrayed, like someone had knocked the wind out of me. I couldn't believe my wife, my Claire, was cheating on me. I confronted her right there. "What's going on, Claire?" I demanded, my voice shaky but firm. She turned pale the moment she saw my face, and the laughter died on her lips. I watched as she scrambled for words, trying to put together an explanation. "Jake, it's not what it looks like," she exclaimed, the panic evident in her eyes. I could see the guilt wash over her, but I was already too far gone into my rage to care about her excuses. Her first response was to deny everything. "We were just talking about art. You know how passionate I am about my work." But I wasn't in the mood for her lies. I was done with her deception. I pushed her further, asking about Michael, demanding to know how long this had been going on. She stammered, trying to piece together a story, claiming it was just artistic inspiration. I didn't buy it for a second. Emotions swirled in my chest, and I felt like I was suffocating. I never thought I would be in a position to confront my wife about an affair, and yet here I was, standing in the middle of a gallery, surrounded by art I once adored but now seemed tainted by the reality of her betrayal. So I stormed out, my heart pounding, panic and hurt coursing through my veins. I didn't want to look back, but I couldn't help it. I needed to process what I'd seen, to understand how the woman I loved could betray me so casually. I thought of everything we built together, the life we created, and felt it all slip away like sand through my fingers. My mind raced as I replayed the night in my head, trying to find the pieces that would make sense of it all. The reality of Claire's affair hit me hard. I felt like a fool for believing her lies, for being so blind to the signs. I needed a plan. I needed to do something, to reclaim my power in this twisted game. And that's when the idea formed. Revenge that would leave her world turned upside down. I'd start by taking away the things that meant the most to her, starting with her precious art scene. To be continued. I spent the next few sleepless nights replaying the confrontation over and over in my mind. The anger simmered beneath the surface, and I knew I had to channel it into something productive, something that would hurt Claire as deeply as she had hurt me. I began to map out a plan, and it centered around Michael, the museum curator who had wormed his way into her life. You see, Claire had always been drawn to the cultural elite. She thrived on connections to art, and Michael was the key to many of those connections. The way she spoke about him with admiration and excitement made it clear he was not just a guy she casually knew. He was a significant part of her life. I would leverage that. I started doing some digging. It didn't take long to discover that Michael was well-connected, grants, funding, and a slew of rich patrons backing his projects. I knew the museum he worked for was almost entirely reliant on that funding. And that's where I would strike. There was nothing more satisfying than the thought of pulling the rug out from under her, watching her favorite art spots vanish before her eyes. I reached out to some contacts I had from my tech job. Networking is a powerful tool. I spoke to a few acquaintances who were familiar with the art scene and knew some of the major donors supporting the museum. I painted a picture of Michael that was less than flattering. I was careful with my words, making it sound like I was simply concerned about the integrity of the museum's programming and its leadership. One of the donors, an influential woman who had supported the museum for years, was intrigued. I mentioned rumors of Michael's alleged impropriety, nothing concrete, but enough to plant a seed of doubt. It didn't take long for my whispers to reach the right ears, and within a week, I felt like I was in a game of chess, moving pieces around with calculated precision. In the meantime, I was still living with Claire, playing the role of the oblivious husband. I could tell she was on edge after my confrontation and was trying to play the part of the perfect wife. I would catch her glancing at her phone anxiously, waiting for messages from Michael. Instead of approaching her about it, I kept my cool, letting her stew in her own guilt while I worked behind the scenes. One night after a particularly awkward dinner where she tried to make small talk, I casually asked her about her next gallery opening. "I heard Michael's been working on something big," I said, feigning interest. She lit up, but there was a flicker of guilt in her eyes. "Yeah, he's been curating some incredible pieces. It's going to be amazing," she replied, her voice laced with enthusiasm, but I could see through it. I decided to push a bit further, wanting to see how she would react. "Is it true that he gets most of his funding from the big donors? I heard there's been some talk about his past." The way her face paled told me everything I needed to know. She tried to play it off, saying that people were always trying to bring him down out of jealousy, but I could feel her unease radiating off her. Days turned into weeks, and I continued to hear whispers about the museum's funding. The donors I had contacted began to distance themselves from Michael, and it was only a matter of time before the museum director called an emergency meeting to discuss his future. I found myself feeling strangely detached from the chaos unfolding around me. I was the puppet master, and Claire was blissfully unaware of the strings I was pulling. One evening, I overheard her on the phone, and it felt like a dagger to the heart. I couldn't make out every word, but I heard enough to realize she was trying to smooth things over with Michael, assuring him that everything would be fine. It was infuriating to listen to her sweet voice, the way it dripped with insincerity as she assured him that it's all just a misunderstanding. The thrill of my plan unfolding filled me with a sense of power I hadn't felt in weeks. Claire thought she could have it all, a husband who loved her and a secret lover who was giving her the thrill she craved. Little did she know, I was about to turn her world upside down. When the meeting finally happened at the museum, I was ready. I had done my homework and made sure to attend the event under the pretense of supporting Claire's work. She was busy mingling with other artists and patrons, and I slipped away to eavesdrop on the hushed tones of the directors discussing Michael's future. I watched as tensions rose, and I felt an odd sense of satisfaction as I saw the seeds of doubt I had planted blossom. The museum board was concerned about the funding. The rumors swirling around Michael were becoming too loud to ignore. Claire's face fell when she noticed the serious atmosphere in the room, and I could see her nerves getting the best of her. Eventually, I watched as the board members made the decision to suspend Michael until they could investigate the claims against him fully. The fallout was just beginning, and I could feel a wave of satisfaction wash over me. Claire would face the consequences of her actions, and I would be there to witness the unraveling of her world. To be continued. The aftermath of Michael's suspension hit Claire like a freight train. I remember the moment she found out, how she rushed into our living room with a look of sheer disbelief painted across her face. It was almost comical watching her try to process what had just happened, and I couldn't help but feel a pang of satisfaction. The shock was palpable, and it was clear she had no idea how to react. "Did you hear? They suspended Michael," she exclaimed, her voice a mix of panic and anger, as if the world was crashing down around her. I maintained my calm demeanor, fighting the urge to smile. "Wow, that's really surprising," I said, my tone deceptively innocent. She shot me a look, one that was a mixture of desperation and confusion. "What do you think this means for the gallery? I can't believe they would do this without any evidence." I wanted to tell her that the evidence was there all along, her lies, her betrayal, but I knew better than to give her any ammunition. Instead, I leaned into the role of the supportive husband. "I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding, Claire. You know how these things can spiral out of control." She nodded, but I could see the wheels turning in her head. I could almost hear her trying to justify her feelings for Michael, trying to convince herself that he was worth fighting for. Over the next few days, Claire's behavior became increasingly erratic. She spent hours on the phone, her voice low and urgent, trying to rally support for Michael among their art circles. It was a desperate attempt to save her lover while maintaining the facade of innocence. I watched with a mix of amusement and irritation as she started spiraling. Whenever I could, I would slip in little comments about how the museum needed stability and that they'd be better off without someone embroiled in scandal. Each time I could see the frustration build in her, but she was too invested in defending Michael to see the truth. One evening she came home late, and I could tell something was off. Her eyes were red and she looked particularly disheveled. "Jake," she said, her voice shaking slightly, "I think we should talk." My heart raced. I was ready for this moment. I settled in, pretending to be a concerned partner, but I was eager to hear what she had to say. "What's on your mind, Claire?" I asked, my voice as steady as I could make it. She let out a long sigh, almost as if she was gathering the strength to confess. I don't know how to explain this. Michael is innocent. They're just trying to smear his name because he's making waves in the art world," she said, her words rushing out like a tidal wave. "I have to help him, Jake. He's important to me." The words stung, but I kept my expression neutral. "Important to you? You mean more than our marriage?" I asked, my voice calm as I crossed my arms. She flinched, the guilt washing over her features. "That's not fair. You don't understand. We have a connection that you can't just dismiss." Somewhere deep down, I could feel the sadness creeping in, trying to remind me of the love we once shared. But I had to stay focused. I needed to keep my composure while she dug her own grave. "Oh, I understand perfectly, Claire. You've been hiding behind your connection to him while you've been lying to me." The tension escalated, and I felt the resentment bubbling to the surface. "You think I do know what you've been up to? You think I'm just going to sit here and let you tear apart everything we built because you're in love with a man who doesn't give a damn about you?" That was the moment I saw the walls she had built come crashing down. She started to cry, and I felt a mixture of satisfaction and guilt wash over me. "I didn't mean to hurt you, Jake. I just got caught up in everything. I never wanted to hurt you." "Then why did you?" I pressed, feeling that old heartbreak clawing its way back into my chest. "Why did you have to betray me like this?" Claire had no answer. She was left without the usual snarky comebacks she relied on when cornered. Instead, she broke down fully. It was messy and raw, and I watched as the woman I thought I knew shattered in front of me. After that confrontation, things only got worse for Claire. She threw herself into trying to salvage her relationship with Michael, and I fed off her turmoil. I didn't need to do much more. The whispers of scandal followed Michael around like a dark cloud, and the museum's board was growing increasingly wary of him. Meanwhile, I kept my distance, adopting the role of the supportive husband while quietly enjoying the chaos unfolding in her life. I had never intended for it to go this far, but watching her unravel was oddly gratifying. As the days turned into weeks, I started reflecting more on my own feelings. I was angry, yes, but I also felt lost. My action of sabotage wasn't just about revenge. It was also about reclaiming my own power in a situation where I felt utterly helpless. One night, after another long day of Claire's frantic phone calls and tearful outbursts about Michael, I sat on the couch, staring into the void. I thought about the future of our marriage. Did I want to fight for something that felt entirely broken? Did I want to salvage a relationship built on lies? I knew what I had to do. I was done playing the supportive husband. It was time to make my final decision about our marriage, to be continued. The decision weighed heavily on my mind as I watched Claire attempt to salvage what was left of her. Relationship with Michael. Each day felt like an emotional tug-of-war for me, torn between the desire to confront her and the urge to continue my silent destruction from the shadows. But the time had come to take a hard look at what I really wanted. One night, as I sat in the living room scrolling through my phone, Claire burst in, her face flushed. "Jake, it's happening. Michael's going to be cleared. They're going to announce it at the next board meeting," she exclaimed, her excitement cutting through the tension in the air. I raised an eyebrow, feigning surprise. "That's great, Claire," I said, keeping my tone as neutral as possible. "So everything's back to normal, you two can just pick up where you left off." Her enthusiasm dimmed slightly and I could see the uncertainty in her eyes. "It's not that simple. They just need to dismiss the claims. I have to support him, Jake. He's been through so much." A part of me wanted to scream, "Support him?" After everything. But I held my tongue. I couldn't let her see how deeply her words affected me. I smiled tightly instead and watched as she paced the room, her mind clearly racing with possibilities. That's when I decided it was time to drop the bomb. "Claire, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady. Her expression wavered as she turned towards me, sensing the seriousness in my tone. "What's wrong? Is it about Michael?" "Yes, it is. It's about everything, actually," I said, trying to keep my heart from racing too fast. "I can't keep pretending that this is okay. I feel like I'm losing myself in all of this." She took a step back as if my words had physically struck her. "What do you mean by that?" "I mean, I can't stand by while you chase after some fantasy with him. It's clear where your heart lies, Claire. You're in love with the idea of him, and I can't be part of a life where I'm constantly fighting for your affection," I said, my voice growing firmer. "I need to know if we're even still a couple." She opened her mouth to respond, but the words tangled up in her throat. I could see the realization dawning on her. This was it, the moment of truth. "Jake, I don't know, I care about you, but I also care about Michael. I didn't mean for this to happen, I just got lost in everything," she stammered, her defenses crumbling. "Lost? You mean you chose to be lost? You chose to hurt me," I replied, feeling the anger bubbling back up. "It's not fair to either of us to continue this charade. You need to choose, Claire. You need to decide who you want to be with." Her eyes filled with tears, and for a moment I thought I saw the flicker of regret. "Jake, I don't want to lose you," she cried, her voice breaking. I shook my head, a knot forming tighter in my stomach. "You already have. You lost me the moment you decided to betray our vows. I can't keep fighting for someone who doesn't fully want me." The silence that followed was deafening, both of us caught in the emotional storm brewing between us. Claire sank onto the couch, her face buried in her hands. I could hear her muffled sobs, and for a fleeting moment I felt guilt wash over me. But then I remembered. The pain she caused, the betrayal that shattered my trust. "Maybe we should separate," I suggested, the words pouring out before I could fully process them. "Just until you figure things out." She looked up at me, her eyes wide with shock. "You want to separate just like that?" "It's a way for both of us to breathe, Claire. I can't keep living in this limbo. I need to find out who I am without you, and you need to figure out what you really want," I said, my tone steady yet empathetic. Claire nodded, her expression a mix of fear and sorrow. "I never thought it would come to this. I thought we could work through it. Sometimes love isn't enough, Claire. We've lost sight of each other in this mess. And I can't keep holding onto a relationship built on lies and deceit," I replied, my voice softer now. She broke down again, and it felt like I was watching the final threads of our marriage unravel before my eyes. I wanted to comfort her, to reach out and assure her that everything would be okay, but I couldn't. I needed to stay strong. That night we sat in silence, the weight of our decision hanging heavy in the air. I could see her grappling with the reality of what lay ahead, a future where I wouldn't be her husband anymore, where she would have to face the consequences of her actions alone. The following days were tense. We lived under the same roof, but the warmth that once filled our home had been replaced by a cold distance. Claire went through the motions of her day while I kept myself busy with work and distractions. I spent less time with her, focusing on my own healing while she continued her desperate attempts to reach out to Michael. I started plotting my next steps. I wanted to make sure she felt the impact of her choices. I had already dismantled her connection to the art world by getting Michael suspended, but I wanted to ensure her escape routes were completely cut off. I reached out to a few contacts at the museum, posing as a concerned patron who didn't want to see our beloved institution tarnished by scandal. I hinted at my worries about the ramifications of allowing someone with a questionable reputation back into a position of influence. I knew how fiercely the board defended the museum's integrity, and it felt good to know I was still pulling strings in the background. Every time I heard Claire mention Michael's name, I felt a surge of satisfaction. The more she tried to defend him, the more I felt reaffirmed in my decision. I was reclaiming my life, and I wouldn't let her drag me down any longer. The days stretched on, and Claire started to look more and more defeated. It was clear that her attempts to reconnect with the art community were failing. The rumors about Michael hung over her like a dark cloud, and slowly but surely, I could see the realization that her affair had cost her more than she could have imagined. As the board meeting approached where they would decide Michael's fate, I felt a sense of anticipation building inside me. Claire was merely a pawn in my game now, and soon she'd realize the full weight of her mistakes. To be continued. The night of the board meeting was electric with tension, and I could feel the anticipation buzzing in the air. Claire had been preparing for days, trying to rally support from anyone who would listen, but I could see the cracks in her confidence. She spent hours glued to her phone, calling contacts and pleading for their support on Michael's behalf. I'd watch her from the sidelines, pretending to be the supportive spouse while secretly relishing her anxiety. "Everything will be fine, right?" She'd ask me, her voice tinged with uncertainty. I'd smile, offering vague reassurances, but inside I was giddy with excitement. That evening, I knew I had to be there. Not just to witness the fallout, but to sit back and watch as everything Claire had fought for began to crumble. I arrived at the museum early, mingling with the patrons and board members, pretending to be just another supporter interested in the arts. I overheard snippets of conversations about Michael. Rumors, doubts, and frustrations were swirling like a storm. It felt surreal, being in the midst of this chaos, knowing I had a hand in orchestrating it all. When the meeting started, I took a seat near the back, my heart racing. Claire was in the front row, her posture tense as she clutched her notes. I could see her, eyes scanning the room, searching for familiar faces, hopping for support. I felt a pang of guilt for a fleeting moment. She looked so small and vulnerable, but I quickly brushed it aside. She had brought this upon herself. As the meeting commenced, the board members began discussing Michael's case. The head of the board laid out the allegations against him, and I could see Claire's face drain of color. The tension in the room thickened as they weighed the evidence, some of which I had carefully orchestrated. "Is there any concrete proof of these allegations?" one supporter asked, trying to defend Michael. I could see Claire perk up at the chance to support her lover, but the board was not buying it. "While there may not be hard evidence, the implications are damaging enough to warrant serious concern," the board chair replied, their tone final. I watched as Claire's demeanor shifted, her confidence waning. She stood up to speak, her voice trembling with emotion. "But Michael is a talented curator. This is about more than just rumors. It's about the art community and everything we've worked for." Her plea echoed through the room, but it fell flat. I felt a surge of satisfaction as I watched the board members exchange glances, their expressions a mixture of sympathy and regret. "Claire, we understand your passion, but we cannot ignore the potential damage this situation poses to the museum's reputation," one member replied gently. "We have to prioritize the integrity of our institution." The words cut deep. I could see the realization wash over her. The board wasn't going to support Michael. She was fighting a losing battle, and it was all unraveling before her eyes. As the meeting went on, I felt a bittersweet sense of victory. Claire's battle for Michael was crumbling, and it was evident she was slowly coming to terms with the reality of her situation. The board ultimately voted to suspend Michael indefinitely, and I could almost hear the shattering of Claire's dreams reverberating through the room. When the meeting concluded, Claire stepped outside, her face a mask of shock. I followed her, my heart racing. "Claire," I called, pretending to be concerned. She turned to me, her eyes wide and brimming with tears. "I can't believe this is happening, Jake. I thought they would understand." I took a step closer, my heart aching for her even as I reveled in the moment. "I know this is hard to swallow, but maybe it's time to reevaluate what's important to you," I said, my tone soft yet firm. "Important?" She shot back, frustration evident in her voice. "You mean Michael? I just lost everything." "Well, maybe you should have thought about that before you made your choices," I replied, my words sharper than intended. She flinched at my tone, and for a brief moment we stood in silence, both of us grappling with the gravity of our reality. I could see the fight slowly leaving her, replaced by a sense of defeat. Eventually she turned away, wiping her eyes. "I don't know how to face this," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "You face it head on. You learn from it," I said, feeling a mixture of empathy and frustration. "But you can't keep running back to Michael. It's clear he's not worth it." Her gaze hardened a bit, and I could see the internal struggle within her. "Maybe I do need to take a step back," she finally conceded, her voice trembling. "But it doesn't mean I'm ready to give up on everything." I watched her, feeling a mix of anger and sympathy. "Maybe it's time to focus on yourself for once," I suggested. "You've been so wrapped up in this fantasy that you forgot who you are." That night, as we returned home, the atmosphere was heavy with unspoken words. I knew we were at a turning point, and I had to decide how to move forward. I could see Claire's spirit was broken. She was lost in a world that had spun out of control, and I was done being the guy who would pick up the pieces. In the days that followed, Claire began to retreat further into herself. She stopped trying to reach out to Michael as often, but the silence in our home was deafening. I felt a strange sense of relief, knowing that my plan had worked, but it was tinged with sadness. I still cared about her, despite everything. I started planning for my own future, one without Claire. I began taking steps to find a new apartment, thinking about what life might look like on my own. I realized I needed that distance, that space to heal from the betrayal that had haunted me. But the more I distanced myself, the more I could see the cracks in Claire's facade. She had lost her lover and her artistic world, and I knew the pain was overwhelming. I wondered if she would ever truly understand the depth of her mistakes, or if she would just keep searching for something to fill that void. As the separation loomed, I felt a mix of hope and uncertainty. I was finally reclaiming my life, but the journey ahead felt daunting. I had a long way to go before I could fully heal from the pain she had caused. To be continued. As the days turned into weeks, the silence between Claire and me became almost unbearable. The once vibrant home we shared felt like a mausoleum, filled with memories that haunted me. I had made my decision to separate, but I struggled with the emotional fallout of ending a marriage that had once filled me with happiness. Claire, on the other hand, seemed to be taking her own descent into despair. She spent hours locked in her studio, her art supplies untouched, her paintings left half finished. I could see the toll that losing Michael and her place in the art world had taken on her. There was a hollow look in her eyes that I had never seen before, a stark contrast to the vibrant woman I had fallen in love with. One evening, as I sat on the couch scrolling through my phone, I noticed Claire sitting at the dining table, a sketchbook open in front of her. She was staring blankly at the page, her pencil idly rolling between her fingers. It had been so long since I'd seen her pick up a pencil. "Hey," I said softly, trying to break the ice. "Are you okay?" She looked up at me, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I don't know, Jake," she admitted quietly. "I feel so lost. Everything I thought I knew is gone." I felt a pang of sympathy. Despite everything, I still cared about her, and seeing her so broken stirred something within me. "You'll find your way again," I said gently. "It just takes time." "I don't know if I can." I thought I could manage it all, my art, my life, Michael, but now I don't have anything, she confessed, her voice cracking. Claire, you need to stop placing your worth in other people, I said, trying to help her see the reality. You have talent and you need to reconnect with yourself. This isn't just about Michael or the museum, it's about you finding what makes you happy. She nodded slowly, but I could see the fight in her had diminished. I know, but it's hard. I thought I could balance everything, but I was wrong. We sat in silence, the weight of our circumstances pressing down on both of us. I had initially taken pleasure in her downfall, but now, as I watched her struggle, the guilt began to creep back in. I had wanted revenge, but watching her suffer felt like a double-edged sword. Do you think we can ever go back to the way things were? Claire asked suddenly, her eyes searching mine for answers. I hesitated. I don't know if we can go back, Claire. The trust is broken, and I can't pretend that everything is okay when it's not. Her face fell, and I felt a gnawing ache in my chest. I never meant to hurt you, Jake. I thought I could have it all, love, art, everything. I just got caught up in my own desire for something more. Desire, it's more than that, Claire. You made choices that hurt us both. You chose to betray our marriage, and that's not something that can just be fixed with words, I said, my voice firm but compassionate. She buried her face in her hands, and I saw the tears spilling over. I'm so sorry, I wish I could take it back. I reached out, placing a hand on her shoulder. We can't go back, but we can move forward. We need to figure out what our lives look like without each other. The conversation lingered in the air, heavy with unspoken emotions. Claire looked up, her eyes filled with determination. You're right, I need to focus on myself for once. I can't keep running back to Michael as my escape. That night marked a turning point for us. As hard as it was, we began to talk openly about our feelings. We shared memories and laughter from our time together, but with an understanding that our paths were diverging. It was painful yet liberating at the same time. In the days that followed, something shifted within Claire. I started to see glimpses of the passionate woman I had fallen for, the artist who poured her soul onto canvas. It was a slow process, but she began to take small steps to reclaim her life. She started painting again, channeling her emotions onto the blank pages of her sketchbook. I was proud of her, but it was bittersweet. As she found her footing, I knew it was time for me to take the next step in my own healing journey. I packed my things, preparing to move into a new apartment. I wanted to give both of us the space we needed to grow. The day I moved out was surreal. Claire stood in the doorway, her expression a mixture of sadness and acceptance. I hope you find what you're looking for, Jake, she said softly, and I could see the sincerity in her eyes. I hope you do too, Claire. You're talented and you deserve to find happiness within yourself. I replied, my voice steady. We shared one last, lingering look before I stepped out. Of the door, the weight of our shared past hanging in the air. As I settled into my new place, I focused on rebuilding my life. I threw myself into work and spent time with friends I hadn't seen in ages. I took long walks, rediscovered old hobbies, and even started dating again. It was liberating to live for myself, free from the shadows of betrayal. Claire and I slowly transitioned into a new relationship, one that was based on respect and understanding, even if it was defined by distance. We checked in with each other from time to time, sharing updates about our lives. The conversations weren't always easy, but they were honest. In the end, I realized that while the journey had been painful, it had also taught me invaluable lessons about love, trust, and self-worth. I had learned to stand up for myself, to reclaim my power, even when it meant watching the woman I once loved lose her way. Life continued, and both of us were on our paths to healing, discovering who we were outside of the roles we had created for ourselves. The scars of betrayal would always remain, but they had transformed into reminders of our resilience. As I looked ahead, I felt a sense of hope. The future was uncertain, but I was ready to embrace whatever came next, without Claire, but with a newfound understanding of myself and what I truly wanted from life.